Well, another candidate has thrown their hat into the ring to be the new leader of the federal NDP. Current Alberta MP Heather McPherson officially launched her campaign over the weekend.
NDP needs a leader that is ready now. Ready to hold the government accountable in the House of Commons, ready to organize and campaign across this country to welcome more people to our table, and ready to win more seats, to give New Democrats across Canada more power to fight for the change that Canadians are counting on. I'm ready.
McPherson is one of only 7 NDP MPs who won a seat in the April federal election. The party lost 17 seats in the House of Commons and lost its official party status. Former leader Jagmeet Singh resigned as a result, and the race to replace him began earlier this month. McPherson's campaign launch comes after activist and journalist Avi Lewis announced his own campaign just over a week ago. Plus, another candidate is expected to announce a bid later this week. Rob Ashton is the Canadian president of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union. For more on her NDP leadership bid, I'm joined now by Heather McPherson. Heather McPherson, it's good to see you. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thanks for having me on, David.
You said in your campaign launch you're ready to win more seats for the New Democrats. I think all of your rivals for the top job would agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
Well, what needs to change for the NDP to do that?
Yeah, you know, listen, we didn't have an election result we wanted to see in April. I mean, we all know that. And I think what we have done is we've made our party smaller, and what we need to do is make our party bigger. We need to make more room at the table. You know, one of the things I talked about at my launch yesterday was this idea I had from when I was young. You know, we have a big family, it's chaotic, it's loud, and we used to take the doors off the hinges to make bigger tables so we could fit more people into those Christmas and Thanksgiving dinners. And I think that's kind of what I'm bringing to this campaign, is the idea that we need to make a bigger table, that more people need to see themselves within our party. We need to go where people are. We don't need to change our values, but we do need to change how we talk about them. We do need to change who we talk to. This is the party that started with rural farmers and urban workers, and we need to be talking to those people again, and we need to be listening again.
So just to walk me through, we've made our party smaller, is what you said. I get the prescription of what you want to do, but how did you end up in that situation? What were the steps or the choices that were made or not made that led to the party becoming smaller?
You know, I think that sometimes there are folks across all political spectrums, but particularly within the New Democratic, that can have a bit of a purity test. You know, that there can be a little bit of you need to be all of these things to be welcome at that table. And I don't think that's how we grow a movement. I don't think that's how we grow a party. We grow a party by making a bigger table, by making more space, by making sure that folks feel welcome. And we do that by talking about things that matter to Canadians, meeting them where they're at. You know, we know Canadians across the country are dealing with an incredible cost of living crisis. They are worried about their jobs. They are worried about jobs for the young people in their family. We know people can't afford groceries. I mean, my goodness, David, I have a 17-year-old son. I know exactly how expensive groceries are. We know that people are worried about health care. The fact that they don't believe they can count on the healthcare system. This is very, very important to so many Canadians across this country, and New Democrats have to go there and talk to people where they're at and bring them back to this movement. You know, I think about the values that make up the New Democratic Party.
Right.
And you could call them progressive values, or you could call them workers' values, but they are those values of taking care of one another. They're those values of making sure everyone in our community is doing well. And frankly, I think those are Canadian values. I think those are values that so many Canadians can get behind, particularly right now when we have, you know, a conservative prime minister in a liberal jersey and a far-right conservative opposition.
But as you start to make that calibration to move away from the purity tests, as you call them, there are going to be people in a progressive movement that are going to look at what some might call a purity test and say this is a bedrock fundamental value for our party and not something we can be flexible on. So how do you calibrate that approach, that in trying to reach out to others who maybe don't fit into that purity test, that you don't alienate some of the more progressive and ideological wings of your party? Yeah,
and I go right back to what I said earlier. I'm not saying we change our values. The values that have made me a New Democrat, the reason I'm running as to be the leader of the New Democratic Party, those don't change. Those values are the bedrock of our movement. But how we talk about those values and who we talk about those values to, that's what matters. And so, we need to be talking to workers in Hamilton, in London, in Windsor. We need to be talking to people across the country. And I think that's the goal. Like, that's how we bring people back. And frankly, let's be honest. I mean, Mark Carney is making the job of New Democrats, making a case for why it's important to have a strong, progressive party that's got values based in fairness and justice and taking care of each other. He's making that case quite easy for us. He's swung very far right from the platform that the Liberals ran on. So much so that the Conservatives are more than happy to support him, more than happy to work with him to get some of his very conservative pieces of legislation passed.
Yeah, well, he certainly moved the Liberal Party to the right of where Justin Trudeau was. I don't know if he's moved far right or farther right, where you'd sit that on a continuum and whether it even applies anymore. But certainly there was an appetite, though, in the country for a shift away from where things had been, which is why Mr. Poilievre was up by 20-25 points for a huge chunk of the year. And in terms of who you were talking about, who you need to win back, a lot of those people went to Pierre Poilievre, right? Southwestern Ontario in particular. I think most of the lost NDP seats went blue, even though a lot of the vote might have gone red. So how do you win back people who would have voted for Pierre Poilievre and convince them to vote for Heather McPherson?
So first of all, I just want to push back a little bit on your comment on Mark Carney, because let's remember, the election was not even 6 months ago. And the things that he won the election on, albeit a minority government, but what he won on were promises that he is not keeping. He won on progressive values. He didn't bring forward some of the things that he has done with some of this legislation that he's already gotten passed. So that's a bit of a problem. But you're right. We did lose votes to the Conservatives, and I think it's because we're New Democrats and we like to fix all the things and we want to be all the things to all the people, but we have to have a message that resonates with working class people, and it has to be a simple message that we can take to people. And that message is, we understand what it means to be a working class Canadian in this country right now. If you want things that will make your life better, things like dental care and pharmacare and a better healthcare system, you elect New Democrats. If you want a party that will fight for workers' rights, we're the only party that is fighting for anti-scab legislation, fighting to make sure that this government stops using tactics to force workers back to work against their right to strike. If you want that to happen, you have to elect New Democrats. And if you want a party that understands that grocery prices are out of control, that the housing crisis needs to be addressed in not just scope but in scale, then you need more New Democrats. And frankly, if you want the Liberal government to follow through on the promises they made to Canadians, the only way that happens is if there are more New Democrats in the House of Commons.
The result, obviously, in the last election, not a good one. Your leader lost his seat. Most of your colleagues lost their seat. But you were one of the few, well, right now, you're probably the only candidate for leadership who was in the caucus and has a seat in the House of Commons. Mm-hmm. Do you need to distance yourself from Jagmeet Singh as you seek this leadership and offer a new vision from the party? Because for whatever the reasons, it was rejected in the last election. Is that a signal that you need to move away from the agenda of the leader you served under these last few terms?
Yeah, listen, I'm so proud of what our caucus was able to achieve, and I am so proud of what Jagmeet was able to achieve. To be honest, dental care has helped millions of Canadians, and that was an NDP policy. The framework for pharmacare, the anti-scab legislation, the investment in housing, all of those things, I'm so proud that we were able to accomplish. Do we need to change? Absolutely. I would love to see all of my colleagues be elected again. I'd love to see them back in the House of Commons because I know how much work they did and how great they were at getting things done. But that goes right back to who we talk to and how we talk to them. Again, we're not changing what New Democrats are. We're saying that we have to talk to people where they're at. And that's the vision I have. That idea of building a bigger movement to make sure that those Canadian values of fairness and justice are being represented in the House of Commons. That's why I'm running to be the leader of the NDP.
Well, Heather McPherson, we appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today. We appreciate your time and good luck in the campaign.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks.